A poor 6-year-old girl offered her only slice of bread to a paralyzed millionaire. "You look hungry," she said, "but not for food." He laughed, then everything began to change. The sky above Willow Street was bruised purple with cold, and the wind slid through broken alleyways like it was trying to steal whatever warmth people had left. The town was quiet that evening, cloaked in the hush that came before snowfall, but even silence had exceptions. The little girl crossing the road wasn't silent. Her boots scraped the pavement, her breath made little clouds, and she hummed quietly as she walked, like she was trying to keep her courage from running out. Her name was Lily Thompson, and she had no idea she was about to change a man's life. She reached the gates of Harrison Manor and paused. The house was enormous, the kind of place with turrets and ivy and a driveway long enough to need its own zip code. People didn't walk up to a house like this. They were invited. But Lily was 6. She didn't know the rules yet. Or if she did, she'd already decided they didn't apply to her. She reached into her coat pocket, pulled out a slightly crumpled paper napkin, and unwrapped the offering inside a half slice of sandwich bread. It was a little dry. She'd saved it from her school lunch and told herself all day that someone else needed it more than she did. She just didn't know who that was until she saw the man in the window again. Every day after school, Lily passed the mansion, and every day, the same man sat in the same chair, staring through the glass like he was trying to remember what the world outside even felt like. He looked sad. Not just sad, tired in a way that didn't come from not sleeping. Tired like he'd stopped expecting anything new to happen. So she knocked. Inside, Robert Harrison was finishing another dinner he wouldn't eat. The roast sat untouched. The silverware was in place. The wine glass was full. His staff followed his orders to the letter, but none of them had stayed longer than necessary in years. Even the help found his silence hard to bear. When he heard the knock, he ignored it. At first, maybe it was the wind. Maybe the gate was loose again. Then came another knock. Light, but clear. His eyebrows furrowed. No one ever came to the front door. Especially not now. Especially not in December. He rolled his wheelchair away from the table and toward the front hall. His fingers brushed the control panel beside the door. It unlocked with a soft click. And there she was. She stood barely 3 feet tall, buried in an oversized coat, with hair sticking out in 6 directions and cheeks pink from the cold. Her nose had started to drip, and one of her mittens was missing. But her eyes, bright, curious, and piercing, blue, looked directly into his without flinching. "Hi," she said. "I brought you something." Robert blinked. "I'm sorry." "What?" She held up the napkin with both hands like it was a treasure. "It's bread. It's not the freshest, but it's still good. I saved it for you." "I'm not homeless," he said. "I know," she replied, "but you look like someone who might be hungry." A pause followed. He raised an eyebrow. "Do you always knock on strangers' doors with stale bread?" "Only if they look like they need it more than me." Robert stared at her. No one had spoken to him like this in a long time, like he was just a man, not a story, not a pity case, not a project, just someone who needed something. "Where's your mother?" he asked. "Working. She works nights a lot. I live across the street, apartment for B. You shouldn't be wandering around at night." "I'm not wandering," Lily said. "I had a mission." He smirked, despite himself. "A mission? To bring you this," she said, holding up the bread again, "and ask you something." "Ask me what?" "If I trade you this bread, will you tell me why you stopped trying?" That did something to him. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked past her, out into the dark, and felt the weight of 20 years pressing on his shoulders. He had everything. Money, power, a house so large he forgot how many rooms it had. But none of it mattered. Not since the accident. Not since his legs stopped working and the world moved on without him. "You're very forward," he said at last. "I get that a lot. What's your name?" "Lily Thompson." "Well, Miss Thompson," he said, "it's 5 degrees outside. Do you want to come in before you freeze?" She hesitated only for a second, then nodded. "Yes, please, but only if you don't mind sharing the bread. I want half." He pressed the door open wider and backed his wheelchair away to make room. "You're not like any kid I've ever met, and you're not like any grown-up I've ever met," she replied, stepping inside. The warmth hit her immediately. She gasped softly and looked around. The entrance hall alone was bigger than her whole apartment. The chandelier above them sparkled like stars. She spun slowly in a circle to take it all in. "Whoa," she whispered. "This is like a castle." Robert watched her from a distance. "It's just a house," he said. "It's not just anything," Lily said. "It's yours. That's special." He didn't have a response to that. She looked up at him and tilted her head slightly. "Does it make you happy?" He stared at her. "What? This house?" she said. "Does it make you happy?" "No," he said honestly. "It makes me comfortable." "That's different." She nodded, as if she already knew that. They moved toward the sitting room. He motioned toward a chair, and she climbed up into it, legs swinging. She placed the bread on the table between them. For a moment, they just sat there in silence. Then Lily spoke again. "You're Mr. Bob, right? That's what people call me. They also say you used to walk." He stiffened slightly. "I did, but now you don't." "That's right." She looked at his legs, covered neatly by tailored slacks, then looked up at him again. "I could help." He gave a soft laugh. "You're 6. She shrugged. "Age doesn't matter. When you're trying to help someone remember how to feel, you think I forgot how to feel. I think maybe your heart is the part that's really broken," she said, "and sometimes when your heart is broken, your legs stop working too." Robert let out a long breath. "That's not how science works." "Maybe not," she said, "but maybe it's how people work." He stared at her, trying to figure out where she came from, how a kid could see so clearly into something most adults avoided. "Tell you what," he said, "you come back tomorrow. I'll give you real food, not just leftovers. And maybe I'll answer your question." "Deal," she said brightly. "And maybe I'll help you remember something too." She hopped down from the chair, bundled up her coat, and turned back at the door. "Good night, Mr. Bob." "Good night, Lily." He watched her run across the street, disappearing into the shadows of the worn-down apartment building. The room was quiet again, but it didn't feel quite so empty anymore. The next morning, Robert Harrison sat by the window with a cup of coffee he didn't plan to drink. He kept glancing at the street. The girl had said she'd come back, but he'd heard promises before. People always meant well until they got bored, or scared, or saw the chair. But something about Lily Thompson was different. There had been no hesitation in her voice, no pity in her eyes. She'd looked at him like he wasn't broken, just unfinished. At exactly 8:14 a.m., there was a knock at the side entrance. He wheeled himself down the hallway. When he opened the door, there she was, same coat, same tangled hair, same mismatched gloves, but this time, she held a paper bag like it was a gift. "I brought you something," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "You brought me something?" She nodded. "Mama says when someone's kind, you should be kind back." She reached into the bag and pulled out a small flower, probably picked from someone's front yard. It was wilted and a little bent, but she held it out like it was priceless. "For being nice to me yesterday." He took it slowly, surprised by how long it had been since someone had given him anything that wasn't paperwork or a medical bill. "Thank you," he said quietly. "That's very thoughtful." Lily stepped inside without being asked, brushing snow from her boots. "Did you eat breakfast?" "Not yet." "You should. Mama says you can't change the world on an empty stomach." He almost smiled. In the kitchen, Mrs. Chen was cleaning up from breakfast. She looked up in surprise when she saw the little girl bounce into the room. "Is this your granddaughter?" she asked. "No," Robert said, "just a visitor." Mrs. Chen eyed Lily warily, but said nothing. She handed Robert a fresh plate of eggs and toast. Normally, he'd push it aside, untouched. But today, with Lily watching, he picked up a fork. Lily sat across from him. "I'm not supposed to talk to strangers," she said, "but I don't think you're a stranger anymore." "Why not?" "Because I know your name, and you know mine, and because I brought you a flower that makes us friends." He didn't argue. He just took another bite of toast. She tilted her head. "Can I ask you something?" "Again," he said, wiping his mouth. She smiled. "Why do you stay in that chair if you don't want to?" His face stiffened slightly. "I don't have a choice." She stood up and walked to him, laying her small hand gently on his knee. "Maybe your legs forgot how to feel loved," she whispered. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Her hand was so warm it made him forget how cold the world had been for the last 20 years. The doctors had told him over and over, complete spinal damage, no chance of reversal. But something about Lily's quiet certainty made that diagnosis feel small, as if science hadn't accounted for something. "May I see your legs?" she asked suddenly. Robert blinked. "What?" "I want to see them." He hesitated. Even his doctors didn't look at them unless they had to. No one touched his legs without gloves and charts and awkward silence. "I suppose," he said. She knelt beside him and pressed her hands to his legs through the fabric. He watched her, unsure what to feel. She closed her eyes, then opened them. "They're sleeping," she said softly. "What? Your legs? They're not broken, just asleep. Really, really deeply, but not forever." He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Lily," she looked up. "I've been in this chair for 20 years. My spine was severed. There's no waking up from that." "That's what doctors say," she replied. "But doctors don't know everything." Her confidence wasn't annoying, it was devastating. It reminded him of who he used to be, the man who believed in the impossible, the man who built an empire from nothing. That man had vanished somewhere between the crash and the divorce and the slow fading of friendships. But this little girl, this stubborn optimist, had brought a flicker of that man back into the room. She sat down across from him again. "Do you want to walk?" she asked. "Of course I do." "No," she said, "not for you." "Do you want to walk for someone else?" He didn't answer right away. "I don't understand the question. If you could walk again, but only to help other people, would you still want it?" He stared at her. "No one's ever asked me that," she nodded. "Well, now someone has." They sat in silence for a few minutes. He watched the steam rise from his coffee. She watched the snow falling outside. "I used to want to walk so I could feel normal again," he said slowly. "So I could go to meetings, travel, get my life back." "Is that still what you want?" He shook his head. "I don't know what I want anymore." "That's okay," Lily said. "We can figure it out together." He looked at her, this child who had walked into his mansion with a half-eaten slice of bread, and somehow managed to sit in his heart like she'd always belonged there. "Will you come back tomorrow?" She nodded. "But only if you promise to eat breakfast again." He laughed, a real laugh, a little rusty, but real deal. As she left, Robert noticed something odd. The house didn't feel so cold anymore, not just in temperature, in presence. Something had shifted. He went back to the window. Across the street, Lily darted through the slush, her feet barely making a sound. He'd always believed his condition was final, that healing, for people like him, was just a word used to soften the truth. But now, for the first time in 2 decades, he wasn't entirely sure. Maybe healing didn't start in the body. Maybe it started with a knock on the door. Lily's boots squeaked softly on the stairs as she climbed to the 3rd floor of the crumbling apartment building across from Harrison Manor. The hallway light flickered overhead, casting shadows that danced against the peeling wallpaper. She didn't mind. She was used to the dark, used to the cold, and used to being alone. Her mother was already running late. When Lily stepped inside their 1-bedroom apartment, it smelled like crackers and lemon-scented cleaner. The apartment was small, cluttered, and dim, but it was home. The space was full of love, even if love wasn't always enough. She slipped off her coat, tossed her gloves into a basket, and sat down at the kitchen table with her crayons. She didn't tell her mum right away when she got home. She didn't want her to worry. But when Maggie Thompson came barreling through the door 30 minutes later, still wearing her janitor uniform from the school where she worked mornings, her face tight with exhaustion and panic, the conversation couldn't wait. "Lily, babe, where are you?" Maggie called, slamming the door behind her. "I'm here, Mama," Lily answered quietly from the kitchen. Maggie appeared a second later, dropping her purse and kneeling beside her daughter. She ran her hands over Lily's arms and face, checking for bruises, scratches, anything out of place. "Mrs. Patterson said you were gone most of the morning yesterday. Where did you go?" Lily paused, coloring the petals of a flower. "I made a new friend." "What kind of friend?" Maggie's voice was sharp now, tired, protective. "His name is Mr. Bob," Lily said. "He lives in the big house across the street. He's in a wheelchair, and he's very sad. But I think I can help him." Maggie's heart stopped. That mansion, that man, a grown man. Her mind flooded with fear, the kind she'd been trained to feel from years of navigating the world as a single mother. She reached for the baseball bat she kept behind the door. "Did you go inside his house?" Lily nodded without hesitation. "Yes, Mama. He gave me food. He was really nice." "Oh my God, Lily," Maggie whispered, her voice breaking. "You can't do that. You can't. You don't know him." "I don't know him, but I do know him," Lily said gently. "He's not scary. He's just lonely. He let me touch his legs. They don't work, but I think they're just sleeping." Maggie's panic exploded into overdrive. "He let you touch his?" "I was trying to feel if they were broken," Lily said. "But they're not. Not really. His heart is the part that's broken, and I know how to fix hearts." Maggie knelt in front of her, trembling. "Lily, you don't go into people's houses. You don't take food from strangers. I don't care if he seems kind. People hide who they really are." "But Mama," "No buts," Maggie snapped. "This world is not kind to little girls who trust too easily." There was a long silence between them. Then, a knock at the door. Maggie froze. "Mrs. Thompson," came a voice from the hallway. "My name is Robert Harrison. I believe your daughter has been visiting me." Her blood turned to ice. He was here. He'd followed them. He knew where they lived. She grabbed the bat and crept toward the door. Peeking through the crack, she saw him sitting in a sleek black wheelchair, dressed neatly in a dark coat. He looked calm, not dangerous, but she knew better than to trust appearances. "What do you want?" she asked through the chain. "I wanted to introduce myself," he said simply. "Your daughter has been coming to my home. I thought you should know who she's spending time with. May I come in?" "Absolutely not," he nodded, unfazed. "Then maybe you could come to me, both of you. That way, you can see for yourself that I mean no harm." "Mama, please," Lily whispered behind her. "I told you, he's nice." Maggie looked down at her daughter's pleading eyes, then back at the man in the wheelchair. Something about his expression stopped her. Not charm, not manipulation, just tired honesty. "5 minutes," she said, "and I'm bringing this." She lifted the bat. Robert smiled, a faint crease in his weathered face. "I wouldn't expect anything less." They walked across the street together. One mother, one daughter, and one stranger who didn't feel like a stranger anymore. As they approached Harrison Manor, Maggie found herself staring up at the house she'd cleaned windows 4 years ago, before her third job, before the eviction notices, before she started skipping lunch so Lily could eat. The front door opened, without a sound. The inside was warm, bright, and painfully clean. "I've seen fancier places," Maggie muttered, trying not to show how impressed she was. "It's just a house," Robert replied. "But it's less empty now." He led them to the kitchen. Mrs. Chen nodded politely at Maggie, but said nothing. Lily darted off to explore like she belonged there. "She's not afraid of anything," Robert observed. "That's what scares me," Maggie said. "She thinks the world is magic, that people are good, but she doesn't know what people are capable of." "Has someone hurt her?" Robert asked quietly. Maggie didn't answer at first. Her hands tightened around the bat. "Yes," she said finally. "Her father." Robert nodded slowly. "I'm sorry, me too." There was something in his voice, not pity, but recognition. Pain recognizing pain, loss recognizing loss. They talked for a while, about jobs, about bills, about how hard it was to be a single mum and feel like you were always one mistake away from falling apart. Lily returned with cookie crumbs on her shirt and a grin on her face. "Mr. Bob," she said, "tell Mama what I told you about your legs." Robert glanced at Maggie, unsure. "She said they were sleeping, and what do they need?" Lily prompted. Robert sighed. "A reason to wake up." Maggie looked from him to her daughter. "What is going on here?" she whispered. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I think I want to find out." Lily climbed into his lap without hesitation and laid her head on his chest. "He won't break our hearts, Mama," she said softly. "He's been hurt too much to hurt someone else." Maggie didn't reply. She just stood there in that golden-lighted kitchen, holding a bat, wondering how a little girl who believed in magic could be right about so many things, and whether love, the kind she'd stopped believing in long ago, might be waiting in the most unlikely place. Across the street, the next evening, Maggie stood outside Harrison Manor, her fingers tugging nervously at the hem of her only good dress. Lily skipped in circles around her, humming to herself, completely unaware of the storm inside her mother's chest. Maggie had spent the entire day second-guessing herself. She was a single mother, 3 jobs deep, 1 week away from eviction. She didn't go to dinner in mansions. She didn't walk willingly into the homes of men she barely knew, especially not men with wealth and power and a past she knew nothing about. And yet, here she was. When the door opened, Robert was already waiting. "You came," he said, as if he'd been holding his breath since they'd left. "Lily wouldn't let me change my mind," Maggie replied. "Smart girl." They stepped inside. The entryway was softly lit, not as imposing as it had felt the first time. Something was different, warmer. The dining room had been transformed. Gone was the long, cold table meant for board meetings and family reunions that never came. In its place sat a small round table near the window, covered in a soft linen cloth. Candles flickered at the center. The chairs were mismatched, but welcoming. Maggie blinked. "This is not what I expected. I wanted it to feel like home," Robert said. "Though I'm starting to realize I don't know what that feels like anymore." She didn't respond, but her shoulders relaxed slightly. Dinner had been ordered from an Italian place downtown. Robert hadn't cooked in years, and Maggie hadn't eaten anything she didn't microwave in months. The smell of fresh bread, garlic, and roasted tomatoes wrapped around them like a memory. "Spaghetti," Lily whispered in delight. "Real spaghetti, not the kind from a can." Robert pulled out a chair for her. "Nothing but the best for my doctor." Maggie's eyebrows rose. "Doctor?" "She's been prescribing me heart medicine," Robert said with a small smile. Lily beamed. "It's not pills, it's feelings." Maggie laughed. "A real one." The sound startled all three of them. As they ate, conversation flowed with unexpected ease. Robert asked about Lily's favorite subjects in school. Maggie told a story about dropping a mop bucket down a stairwell during her morning shift. Lily talked about drawing on the walls in chalk when they couldn't afford paper. "I wanted to be a doctor when I grow up," Lily announced over dessert. Robert smiled. "To help people." "To help him," she said, pointing at Robert. "I'm already practicing." Maggie gave her daughter a gentle look. "Sweetheart, we talked about this. Mr. Harrison has been to lots of doctors. His legs they tried. To fix his legs," Lily interrupted. "But I'm not fixing his legs. I'm fixing his heart." Silence fell over the table. Robert's hand moved slowly to his chest, as if checking it was still there. Maggie looked at him. "She doesn't mean I do." "Mean it," Lily said. "His heart stopped sending love to his legs a long time ago, so they forgot how to move." "That's not how bodies work, baby," Maggie said gently. "Maybe it's how some bodies work," Robert murmured. The idea clung to him like fog. For years, his condition had been described in technical terms: nerve damage, paralysis, irreversible trauma. But what if, in some unscientific, unmeasurable way, Lily wasn't wrong? What if it had started with his heart giving up? She leaned toward him. "If we make your heart better, your legs might remember." "It's a beautiful thought," he said. "It's a real one," Lily replied. Maggie reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Her touch was light, but he felt it like thunder. "I don't know what's happening here," she said. "But I do know this: my daughter hasn't smiled this much in years." Robert looked at Lily, then back at Maggie. He hadn't realized how empty his house was until they'd filled it, and now he couldn't imagine it without them. "I care about both of you," he said softly. "More than I've cared about anything in a very long time." Maggie's eyes widened. "Robert, it's okay," he said. "I don't expect anything. I just want you to know I feel alive again. And it's because of you too." Lily pushed back her chair, climbed onto hers, and gently placed her small hands on both their heads. They froze. "I now declare this house full of magic," she said solemnly. "Because when people love each other, anything is possible." Maggie couldn't help it. She laughed again. Robert just closed his eyes and let himself feel what he hadn't felt in years: connection. The night ended too quickly. Lily fell asleep on the couch, clutching one of Robert's cashmere blankets like it had always been hers. Maggie scooped her up gently, whispering a thank you as she turned toward the door. Robert stopped her. "Come back tomorrow, both of you." Maggie nodded. "We will," and they did. Every night after that, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just for tea, sometimes just to sit in silence while Lily played with scraps of ribbon and bits of imagination. And slowly, the cold edges of Harrison Manor began to soften. The paintings didn't seem so distant. The floors didn't echo so loud. The air didn't feel so stale. Even the staff began to smile more, and Robert began to feel something in his chest that surprised him: hope. 2 weeks into January, something had changed at Harrison Manor. The halls weren't silent anymore. Music played softly in the mornings, usually from an old jazz playlist Robert hadn't touched in years. The dining room smelled like pancakes or cookies most afternoons, courtesy of Lily's experiments with Mrs. Chen. There were flowers in the entryway, crayon drawings on the fridge, a forgotten doll under the grand piano, and laughter. There was laughter in the house. Maggie had settled into the rhythm of her new role almost seamlessly. She managed the household staff with a quiet precision, caught up on years of neglected correspondence, organized the study, and even installed a chore chart for Lily, who insisted on being paid in cookies. She refused to be treated like a guest, and Robert had quickly learned not to argue with her when her eyes got that firm, no-nonsense look. He didn't mind. The truth was, he liked it. He liked all of it. But the biggest change wasn't in the house. It was in him. Robert Harrison had started to feel things again. It began one afternoon while reviewing financial reports in the study. A sharp tingle pricked at the back of his right knee. He froze. For a second, he thought he imagined it. But then it came again, faint, like a whisper but unmistakable. He set the report down and stared at his leg. Had the heater moved? Was it just a draft? He pressed his hand to the spot and waited. Another pulse. It wasn't pain. It wasn't quite touch. But it was there. A spark. After 20 years of numb silence, there was something. He called for Maggie. She arrived in seconds, breathless. "What is it?" I felt. "Something," he said. "In my leg." Her eyes widened. "Are you sure?" He nodded slowly. "I think so." Before she could say anything else, Lily burst into the room, her cheeks pink from running. "I knew it," she shouted, running toward him. "I saw your face through the window. You looked different." Robert chuckled. "You have magical window vision now." "No," she said seriously. "But I can tell when someone's about to remember how to feel." She climbed onto his lap and looked up at him. "Is it starting?" He nodded. "It might be." Lily beamed. "That means your heart is almost all better." Maggie knelt beside them, her hand gently touching his. "Do you want to call your doctor?" He hesitated. What could he even say? "Hi, it's Robert Harrison. Remember me? Your most hopeless case." I felt a tingle, a pulse. Something you said was impossible. It sounded crazy, but it felt real. "I'll call her tomorrow," he said. "I need to think." That night, after Lily went to bed, he and Maggie sat alone in the kitchen, a bottle of red wine open between them. Neither of them drank much, but tonight felt different. "It scares me," he said quietly. "What does?" "Hope." She nodded. "Yeah, it does that." He looked at her. "Do you believe in any of this? Really?" Maggie took a long sip of wine before answering. "I don't know what I believe anymore. I've seen enough of the world to stop waiting for miracles. But Lily, she believes. She always believes. And somehow, she makes me want to believe, too." Robert looked down at his leg, the one that had betrayed him for so long. And for the first time, he wondered if it was ready to forgive him. By the end of that week, the sensation in his right leg had grown stronger. Not constant, but more frequent. Sometimes it was warmth. Other times, a strange pressure. Once, during lunch, he swore he could feel the seam of his pant leg brushing against his skin. He didn't tell anyone else. Not yet. Not until he was sure. Then, one morning, as Maggie helped him into his chair, her fingers brushed his ankle, and he gasped. "Did you feel that?" she asked. He nodded. "I did." They went to see Dr. Winters the next day. She had been his neurologist for 15 years. She was a firm believer in science, not stories. She'd seen it all. False hope, miracle, cures, the latest therapies that always ended in disappointment. So when Robert told her what he'd been experiencing, she was skeptical, but she listened. She ran her tests, checked reflexes, tapped, poked, scanned. After an hour, she set down her clipboard and looked at him differently. "There are changes," she admitted, subtle, but real. Increased circulation, minor muscle reaction, warmth where there was none. Robert leaned forward. "So I'm not imagining it?" She shook her head. "No, something's happening." He looked at Maggie, then back to Dr. Winters. What could be causing it? Dr. Winters hesitated. "You haven't started any new treatments, medications, trials?" "Nothing," Robert said. "The only thing that's changed is them." He nodded, toward Maggie and Lily. Dr. Winters raised an eyebrow. "Them? I'm not alone anymore." She studied him. "Do you believe that's what's causing this?" "I believe it's part of it," he said. "I believe when your heart starts working again, maybe the rest of you remembers how to live." She didn't argue, because he was right about one thing. Whatever was happening wasn't in the medical textbooks, but it was happening. By early February, word had begun to spread. It started with a neighbor, then a distant cousin, then a man from the law firm that had handled Robert's divorce. Someone had seen Maggie through the window. Someone else had recognized Lily, and someone else had told someone else that the paralyzed millionaire across the street had started moving his legs. And in the world outside Harrison Manor, people did not like unexplained things, especially when they came with headlines. The first article appeared in a local tabloid. Single mother moves into wealthy recluse's mansion. Is it love or a scam? There was a photo of Maggie coming down the front steps with Lily, a blurry shot of Robert in his chair behind them. Maggie stared at the headline in disbelief. This is a joke. Robert was quiet. It's not. Lily looked between them. Why are they mad at us? Because people are afraid of what they don't understand, Maggie said. Or maybe, Robert added, because people can't believe something good could happen without a catch. He picked up the paper and set it aside. We'll handle it. But how? Maggie asked. He looked her in the eyes. We stay honest, we stay close, and we don't let them take what we've built. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. We're in this together now, whatever came next. That night, after Lily had gone to sleep, Robert rolled into the kitchen and stood up, just for a moment, just enough to feel his toes press into the tile. Maggie turned, saw him, and gasped. I'm standing, he whispered. Not well. But, yes. She rushed to him, steadying his arm, holding his waist. He looked at her, overwhelmed. Do you see now? He asked. I see everything, she whispered. And just like that, the miracle that had started with a knock at the door took its first real step. But outside, in the shadows, the world was still watching, and it wasn't done yet. The morning the lawsuit arrived, it was raining. Not the soft kind that made the windows shimmer, but the cold, hard kind that soaked through coats and turned sidewalks to rivers. The kind of rain that made people stay inside. But Robert Harrison didn't stay inside anymore. He was in the greenhouse, watching Lily and the gardener transfer young seedlings into pots. She was wearing bright yellow boots, 3 sizes too big, a hand-me-down from Mrs. Chen, and a raincoat with frogs on the buttons. She sang while she worked, completely unaware of the storm forming beyond the weather. Maggie found Robert there, her expression tense. There's something you need to see, she said quietly. Back in the study, she handed him a thick envelope. Official, Heavy Whitmore, Sterling and Associates, the law firm that had represented Catherine, Robert's ex-wife. He opened it slowly, like a man defusing a bomb. Inside were neatly printed pages, stamped and signed. Legal language, accusations, demands. Catherine was suing him. She's claiming diminished mental capacity, Maggie said. She's arguing that your relationship with me and Lily has made you unstable. Robert stared at the words. He knew Catherine well enough to know her motives. She didn't care about his condition. She cared about the estate, the headlines, the inheritance she'd lost in their divorce. She wants to undo the settlement, he murmured. She's saying I've been manipulated. By me, Maggie said softly. By us. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Robert closed the file with a sharp snap. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's a lawyer's dream, Maggie said bitterly. I'm a single mom with no legal training and a kid who believes in fairy tales. Robert turned toward her. And I'm a billionaire who's regaining the ability to walk. She's going to twist all of this. She can try, he said, but we have truth, and we have each other. Maggie didn't answer right away. Her eyes were full of worry, not just for herself, but for Lily. What if this hurts her, she asked. It won't, Robert said. But even he wasn't sure. The media storm came next. Paparazzi at the end of the driveway. Journalists camped outside the apartment. Maggie no longer lived in tabloid covers screaming, "Gold digger heals millionaire. Paralyzed CEO caught in caregiver love scam." There were photos, some grainy, some too clear. One caught Robert and Lily in the greenhouse, laughing. Another showed Maggie helping him stand beside the kitchen counter. The most damaging one was simple, Maggie pressing a gentle kiss to Robert's cheek. He called his lawyer. They issued statements. They demanded retractions. But the headlines kept coming. Dr. Winters arrived 3 days later with a folder full of medical documentation and a frown carved deep into her face. Catherine's attorneys have subpoenaed your medical history, she said. They want to prove your improvements are delusional. They'll find data, Robert said. You measured it yourself. They'll say it was misread, or that it was manipulated. I'm not imagining it, I know, she said. That's why I'm here. She pulled out a packet. I've prepared a complete neurological report. If this goes to court, I'll testify. Maggie watched from across the room, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Dr. Winters turned to her. They may come after you next. Accuse you of coercion, fraud, emotional exploitation. Maggie's voice was steady, but quiet. Let them. Robert looked at her. You shouldn't have to fight this, but I will, she said. She didn't smile, but he could see the fire in her eyes. That night, the three of them gathered around the kitchen table like they always did, but the mood was different, heavy, tense. Lily played quietly with her napkin, folding it into strange shapes. She glanced up and noticed the worry on both adult faces. "Why does everyone think we're bad?" she asked. Maggie reached over and stroked her hair. "Because they don't understand what we have, and some people are afraid of what they don't understand." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Love isn't something you can steal." Robert blinked. "What? You can steal money, you can steal stuff, but you can't steal someone's heart. They have to give it to you." Maggie looked at Robert. She hadn't said it yet, not out loud, but it was there, unspoken between them. Given, not taken. Lily stood up on her chair, pressed her little palms to both of their cheeks, and whispered, "If you know it's real, that's all that matters." Robert wrapped an arm around her and pulled her close. Maggie joined them. They stayed that way for a long time, three people huddled against a world that didn't believe in miracles. The next morning, Robert stood again, without help. He reached the kitchen counter, took a shaky step forward, and felt his legs respond. The sensation was stronger, steadier. He turned toward Maggie, tears in his eyes. "I'm really walking," he whispered. She reached for him, her voice breaking. "I know." And in that quiet moment, no headlines, no lawyers, no cameras, everything else faded away. Just him, just her, just Lily, asleep in the next room, and the miracle unfolding in their home, one impossible step at a time. By the end of February, the snow had mostly melted. The world outside Harrison Manor was waking up, slowly, hesitantly, the way things do after a long, bitter winter. So, was Robert Harrison. He could now stand without assistance, walk short distances with a cane, feel pressure and warmth in both legs. The transformation was subtle, but undeniable. Dr. Winters had officially labeled his condition as neurological regeneration of unknown origin. The scans showed what shouldn't be possible: nerve pathways reconnecting, spinal inflammation disappearing, muscles responding after 20 years of silence. It was, by all medical standards, a miracle. And yet, Robert couldn't sleep. Not from pain, not from fear, but from doubt. Late one night, he sat alone in the study, watching the fireplace flicker. Maggie entered quietly, wearing one of his oversized sweatshirts and a tired look in her eyes. She'd fallen asleep with Lily after reading one of the books. Lily insisted on acting out in full. "You okay?" she asked, sitting across from him. "I don't know," he admitted. "You walked 20 feet today," she said, unaided. "That's more than—" "Okay, I know," he said softly. "That's not what I mean." She leaned forward, concerned. "Then what's wrong?" He looked at her for a long time before answering. "What if you only loved me because I needed you?" The words sat between them like broken glass. Maggie's face tightened. What if the man you fell for was the man in the wheelchair? The one who needed help, who needed you? What happens if that man disappears? She stared at him. "You think I fell in love with your pain, I think. Maybe you loved me because I couldn't walk away." Silence. Then Maggie stood, walked slowly to him, and knelt in front of his chair. "Look at me," she said. "He did. I didn't fall in love with you because you were broken. I fell in love with you because you were real, because I saw the way you let Lily into your life when you didn't let anyone in, because you cared about us before you cared about yourself. But I was vulnerable," he whispered. "You had all the power." She smiled sadly. "No, Robert, we both needed something. You needed purpose, I needed safety. And Lily, she just needed someone to believe in." He took her hand. "What if I lose the part of me you cared about most?" She squeezed his fingers. "Then we find new parts. Together." A beat passed. Then she added, "But I think the part I love most has nothing to do with your legs." He looked at her. "What is it then?" "The part that still thinks he's not enough, even when he's giving everything." His breath caught. Maggie leaned up and kissed him gently, slowly. No performance, no pressure, just truth. When they pulled apart, Robert leaned his forehead against hers. "I'm terrified," he said. "Good," she replied. "That means it's real." The next morning, Lily marched into the study holding a clipboard made out of cardboard and tape. "It's time for your next treatment," she declared. Robert raised an eyebrow. "Oh, what's today's prescription?" "Joy," Lily said. "And dancing." "Dancing." Maggie laughed. "He just learned how to walk, Lily. He doesn't have to dance." Lily said, "Just sway a little. Move to music." Remember what happy feels like. Robert stood, carefully. All right then, what kind of music cures paralyzed millionaires? Lily tapped the clipboard. Frank Sinatra. That's what Mrs. Chen says. Excellent choice, he said. Maggie put on the music, and as the warm croon of Sinatra's voice filled the house, Robert took Maggie's hand. They didn't waltz or spin, they just swayed, to people learning how to move again, not just physically, but emotionally, in rhythm with something fragile and new and impossibly precious. And Lily clapped from the couch. You look like people who love each other, she said. Robert smiled. You don't look scared, she said. That's how I know. But outside the gates, fear was growing. Catherine's legal team had filed a formal motion to freeze Robert's assets pending psychological review. The media had shifted from curiosity to suspicion, and no one knew who had hired a private investigator. One afternoon, Maggie caught a man in a sedan watching the house with binoculars. She called the police, but he was gone by the time they arrived. What do they want? She asked Robert that night. They want the story to fall apart, he said. They want to prove that this can't be real. But it is real, she whispered. He nodded. That's what makes it so dangerous to them. Still, the house was changing. Lily had drawn a family portrait and taped it to the refrigerator. It showed Robert standing, Maggie smiling, and Lily with a crown on her head. This is us now, she said, because we fit. Robert looked at the drawing for a long time. He'd once thought he didn't fit anywhere anymore, but now there were crayon lines tying him to something, someone, a family, and he would fight to keep it even if the rest of the world tried to take it away. It began with a single step onto the sidewalk. Robert Harrison, dressed in a tailored black coat and leaning gently on a cane, exited the front doors of Harrison Manor with Maggie on one side and Lily on the other. It wasn't planned, it wasn't staged. They were on their way to the corner cafe Lily loved, the one with cinnamon rolls and handwritten menus, but someone had been watching. Across the street, in a nondescript sedan, a man raised his phone and began filming. Robert took another step, then another, and in less than 5 seconds, the miracle was out of their hands. The video hit the internet within the hour. A grainy clip, shaky with zoom, captioned "Paralyzed billionaire walks," with help from mysterious woman and child. By the next morning, it had over 7 million views. The world exploded. Talk shows ran panels. News outlets dug through archives. Medical forums lit up with theories. Some praised it, some mocked it. Some called it the greatest medical anomaly of the century. Others called it a hoax. Robert sat in his study, watching the chaos unfold on a muted television screen. Maggie stood behind him, arms crossed, jaw tense. Lily, unfazed as always, played on the rug with a stack of plastic animals. They're calling me a fraud, Robert said, pointing to the screen. They're scared, Maggie replied. People don't know what to do when something doesn't fit the rules. They think you're manipulating me. And what do you think? He turned to face her. I think this wouldn't have happened without you. And if it had, she asked gently, if your body had started healing on its own. He shook his head. It wouldn't have. She nodded. That was enough. Later that day, the first news van appeared. Then, 3 more. By evening, the street was filled with cameras, drones, and strangers with microphones. Robert agreed to a single interview, not for publicity, for clarity. They set up in the greenhouse, the safest, calmest place in the house. The same place where Lily had first told him his legs were just sleeping. The interviewer, a sharp woman with kind eyes, adjusted her mic and asked the question everyone wanted to hear. Mr. Harrison, how do you explain this? He didn't answer right away. Then he looked into the camera. I don't know how to explain it in a way that fits into charts and scans, he said. All I know is I spent 20 years sitting still, waiting to feel something, waiting for the world to make sense again. And then one day, a little girl knocked on my door and asked if I was hungry. The interviewer tilted her head. Hungry for what? For something real, he said. Something kind. He looked at Maggie and Lily, seated just out of frame. She gave me a piece of bread, he continued, and asked me to trade it for a reason to smile. I haven't stopped smiling since. The interview aired that night. Clips went viral, but so did criticism. Convenient miracle. Rich man invents inspiration porn. Single mother manipulates lonely billionaire for inheritance. Hateful comments poured in. Photos of Maggie's past resurfaced, old credit issues, custody records from her ex. Lily's school was contacted. Her teacher called Maggie crying, apologizing. "We didn't know this would happen," Maggie whispered that night. "I did," Robert said. She looked at him. "And you still let it happen?" "I had to," he said, "because truth doesn't mean anything if we keep it locked in here." He touched his chest. "And if the world wants to destroy it?" He reached for her hand. "Then we let them try, and we keep walking." But the pressure mounted. Catherine filed for an emergency hearing, accused Robert of faking his condition, demanded medical re-evaluation, called for control over his estate. Maggie was subpoenaed. So was Lily. Robert's attorney begged them to settle privately, offer her a payout. The lawyer said, "Make it go away." Robert said no. He wouldn't pay to keep the truth quiet. They would fight it in court. On the eve of the hearing, Lily crawled into Robert's lap while he sat in the library. "You scared?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "Are you?" She shook her head. "I know the ending." "Oh really?" "Yeah, you win." He smiled. "That's a nice ending." "It's not just nice," she said. "It's true. Even if the judge doesn't believe us, then we make our own truth." He nodded. "That's what we've been doing, haven't we?" "Yep," she said. "Every time you take a step." He kissed the top of her head. "I love you, Lily. I love you too," she said. "Even when you're old and grumpy and walking just fine." That night, Robert stood in front of the mirror alone. He stared at his reflection, at the man who used to believe the best parts of his life were behind him. And then he took one step forward, and another. No cane, no help, just him, and the impossible. The courtroom was colder than anyone expected. Not in temperature, but in tone. Robert Harrison sat at the front of the gallery, dressed in a charcoal suit, his cane resting beside him, not for need, but as a reminder. His attorney sat to his left. To his right, Maggie sat upright, composed, one hand resting protectively on Lily's leg beneath the table. Lily, wearing her best dress and a determined expression, clutched a stuffed bear under one arm. Across the room sat Catherine, perfectly manicured, wrapped in designer black eyes, sharp as glass. She didn't look at Robert, not once. She didn't need to. This wasn't about him. It was about control, power, and public narrative. The judge entered, stern and slow. Cameras weren't allowed, but the courtroom was packed. Journalists, observers, and skeptics filled every seat. What had started as a story of impossible healing was now being dissected like a scandal. The first witness called was Dr. Winters. She testified clearly, confidently. "Yes, there is neurological regeneration," she said. "No, it cannot be fully explained with current science, but it is real." "And could it be psychosomatic?" Catherine's attorney asked. "Psychosomatic healing doesn't regrow nerve pathways," Dr. Winters replied. "It doesn't rebuild spinal communication. This is not a fantasy. This is measurable." The attorney tried to rattle her. She didn't break. Next they called Maggie. She stepped up to the stand with steady eyes and an iron spine. They asked everything. Her employment history, her financial records, her relationship with Robert. "Did you target him?" they asked. "No," she said. "Did you manipulate his emotions?" "No." "Did you see an opportunity and take it?" Maggie looked at the jury. "I saw a man sitting in a dark room, waiting to feel alive again, and I let my daughter remind him that he still could." They pressed harder. "Do you benefit financially from this relationship?" She nodded. "Yes." "And does that affect your intentions?" "It changes nothing," she said. "Love and money can exist in the same house. What matters is which one you walk toward." She stepped down. The room murmured. Then Catherine was called. She was eloquent, cold, flawless. She painted a picture of Robert as a broken man clinging to fantasy, of Maggie as a gold digger, of Lily as a tool. Robert said nothing as she spoke. He just watched. And when his turn came, he stood, without assistance. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. He walked to the stand on his own two legs, slowly, but proudly. When asked to explain what had happened, he didn't offer science. He didn't blame anyone. He told a story about a girl, a piece of bread, and a door that hadn't opened in 20 years. "I don't know how to explain what's happened to me," he said, "but I know this. I wasn't saved by a miracle cure. I was saved by people, two people. One with enough love for the world to give her lunch away, and one with enough strength to stay even when the world tried to break her." He looked toward Maggie and Lily. "They didn't cure me. They reminded me that I was never dead to begin with." The courtroom went quiet. Then Catherine's lawyer stood. "I have one last question," he said. He turned to Lily. "I'd like to call the child to the stand." Maggie immediately stiffened. "She's just a little girl. I want to speak," Lily said. The judge hesitated, then nodded. Lily took the stand, too small for the chair. Her feet dangled above the floor. "Do you understand what it means to tell the truth?" the lawyer asked. "Yes," Lily said. "And do you know why you're here?" "Yes." "Why do you think Mr. Harrison is getting better?" She didn't blink. "Because he remembered what love feels like." Laughter rippled through the gallery. The judge hushed it. "And what makes you think you had anything to do with it?" Lily smiled. "I was the first one to knock on his door in a really, really long time." "And what did you say to him?" She looked at Robert. "I asked if he was hungry." The lawyer raised an eyebrow. "Hungry for kindness," she said. "And he was." The lawyer rolled his eyes. "So you think kindness helped him walk again?" "I think kindness helps everyone do everything." He tried to press more, but the judge raised a hand. "That's enough." Lily hopped off the chair, walked over to Robert, and climbed into his lap like she belonged there. The courtroom didn't gasp this time. It sighed. Something cracked open in that room. Not in a way anyone could explain, but they all felt it. The judge recessed for the afternoon. The press gathered outside, and as Robert stepped down the courthouse steps, holding Maggie's hand with Lily skipping just ahead, the cameras didn't see a man walking. They saw a man choosing to walk toward something, not away. Later that evening, in the quiet of the living room, Robert asked Maggie a question he'd never asked before. "If they make us choose between love and legacy, what do we pick?" She looked at him. "We already chose." He nodded. Outside, the headlines continued, but inside the manor, a family danced slowly to a song only they could hear. And every step, no matter how shaky, was one more than the world had given them permission to take. 3 days later, the courtroom was silent. Not a sound, not a whisper. Even the press had gone still, waiting for the gavel. Robert Harrison sat beside Maggie. No cane today, just her hand in his, and Lily's head on his shoulder. The judge cleared her throat. "This case," she began, "has captured public attention not because of legal complexity, but because of human contradiction. It's a case built not on fraud or theft, but on doubt about what people believe is possible, and what they believe about each other." She looked from Catherine to Robert. "I've reviewed the evidence. Medical records, testimonies, financial histories, and one deeply compelling interview from a 6-year-old girl who doesn't understand what's at stake, but somehow understands what's true." A soft smile crossed her face, just briefly. "In the eyes of this court, there is no evidence of fraud, no undue manipulation, no legal basis for the request to seize or reassign the Harrison estate." The gavel came down. Case dismissed. Gasps, then silence. Robert turned to Maggie, unable to speak. Lily jumped into his lap again, grinning. "I told you," she said. "We win." Maggie kissed Robert's cheek. Not for the cameras, not for the court, just for him. Catherine left the courthouse without a word. She'd fought not for justice, but for control, and in the end, she'd lost to something she never saw coming. Love. Not the kind that makes headlines. The quiet kind. The kind that stays. Outside, the press surged, but Robert raised his hand. "No statements," he said. "Not today." They walked past the microphones, the cameras, the flashbulbs, past the reporters shouting for answers, because this wasn't about them anymore. It never was. The following week, Robert gave away the mansion. Every wing, every room. He didn't sell it. He opened it. Harrison Manor became the Lily Center for healing, a non-profit home for patients with severe injuries who had given up on possibility. Doctors, nurses, artists, and therapists filled the halls. Lily's drawings were framed in every room. One was titled, "Don't Forget Your Heart Has Legs Too." Robert and Maggie didn't live there anymore. They moved into a modest house 2 towns over, where the backyard had just enough room for a garden and a swing. Lily got a puppy, Maggie got Sundays off, and Robert, he got mornings, the kind with pancakes and sunlight, and people who loved him for who he was, not what he'd lost. He still used the cane sometimes, not because he needed it, but because it reminded him of the journey. One evening, years later, Lily, now older, taller, still just as fierce, sat with Robert under the porch light. "You remember the bread?" she asked. He laughed. "I'll never forget." "Was it good?" He grinned. "It was the best thing I ever tasted." She nodded. "It wasn't even fresh. That's what made it perfect." Why? Because it was everything you had. Lily rested her head on his shoulder. Do you think we'll ever tell people the whole story? He looked at her. I think we already did. And somewhere, in a house no longer grand, with paint that chipped and floors that creaked and laughter that lived in every corner, a poor girl's gift and a paralyzed millionaire's broken heart finished telling a story the world couldn't explain. Because some stories don't end with science or courtrooms. Some stories end where love begins, with a knock on the door, a half of bread, and a miracle nobody saw coming but one little girl always believed.